Hello guys, welcome back to another video, and today it's going to be part 2 of playing ladder with some new decks featuring some new cards from the Brothers in Arms expansion. And in the last video we saw a whole lot of control, a whole lot of discard, some ramp, and today it's going to be very different. We're going to see much more fast-paced decks, much more tempo decks, and probably as a result better decks. I make no promises, however. I have some decks I'm definitely excited to show off. And yeah, I'll quickly show my ladder. I'm sitting around top 100 right now. We see I've fallen out of top 100. I've been really grinding a lot of Japan USA ramp, which is honestly my favorite deck right now. I might show that off at the end. But before that, let's get into some more aggressive games, some fast games, and I will show you the best that we get. So without further ado, let's roll the intro.
What a performance there by J King.
J King, full plot armor.
J King is pushing himself into the ranks of the legend.
J King is our world champion. J King 7. What? The back-to-back Cards world champion.
Alright, so the first deck we have up is Japan Ger Aggro Classic. I mean, we all knew it was going to bounce back. The question was, what would it look like? And the answer is pretty old school. You see, we already have the expansion. Now, there's a trillion different ways to build this deck. There's no confirmed meta way. This is my current iteration, where I have the 24ths. I know some people don't like it in aggro. Obviously, it's a great card, especially in control, but I know some people don't like it in aggro. They prefer Akitas, they prefer Whirlwinds, things that can blitz up. However, I absolutely love it for thinning out the deck. And we are on the Blitzkriegs. And I'm on double Enigma, which is where I think I differ from most people. Most people run 0 to 1 Enigmas. I'm 100% on the double Enigma, and I thought this was going to be German-Japan. I'm pleasantly surprised. I really thought this was going to be German-Japan discard. Instead, it is German-Japan burn, which should be a relatively easy matchup. Well, let's start with type 94. Is it the Stranglehold? It is the Stranglehold. Alright, well, I can live with that. I'd rather have that Strangleholded and keep the type 93 in hand than have the type 93 hit by a Careless Talk. Well, this is just going to be a pretty easy pin this, go face. Although, actually, with Island Defense. So this is currently 5 in the front line, 6 on board. I 100% do not want to drop him to 10. Although perhaps I can develop key. I develop key, I drop him to 15, I pin this. Next turn, I play type 93 and win the game? Yep, let's just go for it. Another way I differ from some of the Jago decks you've probably seen on ladder, and let's see if I draw it, is the 101st, the Pincer, the 2/5 German Pincer card. You've probably seen that a lot of that in Pincer decks. Shoots it, really. Alright, well, this is not quite lethal. Type 93 draws lethal. Not quite type 93. Expansion into Blitzkrieg is lethal? No. Now, I can pin Dragon Slayer again. And I could even pin the Schützen. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. I shouldn't have placed them all here because of Under Fire. This was a dumb mistake. But again, still keeping him below 10 health. because you better believe this guy's running island defense. Alright, now we just have to play around Stranglehold, and we get the Surrender. Another reason I really like Enigma in this deck is Honorable Death on Enigma. Honorable Death plus Enigma, very good combo. And of course, Key with Enigma, another solid. I'm gonna adjust this volume a bit. I turned my volume up a tad. Yeah, let's just get straight into the next game. I'm going to do another on Ger Aggro, try to show off some of the other cards and get a match that lasts longer than 2 minutes. Alright, here we are in game 2, and I'm actually going to keep the 101st because we have a lot of 0-up units. I'm going to keep the double type 94 just because without Feint it's slightly harder to get your surprise attacks off. I'm a little concerned about supply shortage. Now, we don't have it here, but 101st on Bicycle Regiment just ends the game. It's actually hilarious. Let's not try to overcommit too hard into a supply shortage. Yes, if your supply shortage is here, it means there's a clock on the signal, but I'd prefer a clock on the signal and having units to play on the following turn. Oh, if he doesn't have a second supply shortage, this game might be over very, very fast. Because we are currently threatening 7-9 damage. That's very sad. Okay. I think we're just gonna rip a Shenano and pray. And our prayers have been listened to. Takes out all of the Plan Wests, the Legions. Now he could Uprising to clear this board. He drops down to 3 health if he does so. That's probably Uprising he's checking right now. Probably doesn't want to take that much damage, but he might not have any other choice. He could also just, you know, summon more Legions. He is dead if he summons more Legions. Second supply shortage. Okay, well it's still gonna means he takes 3. Very sad that we couldn't get the 101st on Bicycle. I mean, we had that one opportunity too, but obviously it dies instantly. Well, we have a couple ways of going about lethal here. Assuming he doesn't run Interception, I think is the safest route. Alright, and that's just another very fast win on this deck. We will move on. But first, let's take a quick look at this deck. So, like I mentioned, the early game, pretty standard stuff. I'm not running Yokosukas in here, but I have managed to get in the Type 94s, which were a struggle to try to get into this deck. 1 Honorable Death, 2 Expansion, and 2 Enigma is the draw engine, and that doesn't look like a lot. But I can pretty consistently hit Fatigue with this deck because of the incidental draw from 24th Cavalry. This is an additional 3 draw. 22nd, which is at least 1 draw each. And sticking Key is actually easier these days because of Dragon Slayer. Often your opponent will run like 1 Sky Barons or 1 Sky Baron equivalent, 1 card that's able to deal with an early big fighter. So if you play like Dragon Slayer earlier in the game, Key sticks more. Of course, you have your 2 draws from Dina. Now, a couple of the things it's lacking. I am on 1 Whirlwind, no Shinodos. So that is a big downside with the double Blitzkrieg. This deck is 100% a work in progress. It would be nice to fit in more Blitz tanks, because then you can hit the Blitzkrieg more, but 101st just feels so good in this deck. 101st on really any 0-up thing on turn 3, just to get the stats growing. And then in the late game, Key, Dragon Slayer, Shiden. This is pretty substantial, sort of big, large units to get yourself across the finish line if you can't do it with Blitzkrieg. Really, the point of Blitzkrieg is just for island defense decks. But yeah, this deck, very, very solid, but again, lots of different ways you can build it. I even have a different version of Ger Aggro down here. Largely similar, but this one has AA guns, Kagashimas. You see it doesn't have the Whirlwind, doesn't have the Type 94s, has an extra honorable death at Yokosuka. Working on these decks is definitely a work in progress, try to nail down what the true meta list is. But for now, all of them working pretty well. So let's move on to the next deck. Alright, so this deck is the classic Combined Arms deck, but with a slightly modern twist, a Brothers in Arms twist, if you will. Although maybe we aren't going to be seeing it in this game, because it looks like we have the hand to win on, like, turn 3. Like this, it's not quite a turn 3 win. It's 18 damage on turn 3. But this is certainly going to cause our opponent here quite a lot of pain. So this is really, if you haven't seen the Combined Arms deck, if you're relatively new, this deck has fell out of popularity after a couple nerfs to it in recent months. However, it is back with a vengeance in this expansion. Because of, I mean, really, the things you're seeing me do now. This is stuff the deck could always do. I mean, sometimes you have Hammer on turn 1 into Jaeger Regiment to reduce the operation cost, and then Combined Arms to buff it. This guy is just dumping all of his cards in an attempt to stave off lethal. Now, here's an interesting question. There's no lethal here on this turn. We can put him to 1 in a couple different ways. Now, there's an argument to save autocannon, certainly. I'm gonna play it because it seems like it will be difficult for him to remove this, and if he can, it will be through something like Observer Core Carpet Bombing, which means we just kill him with the Panzer A in hand. Whereas if we greed, it lets him just play healing. So, yeah, that's game 1. We'll, like the Ger Aggro before this, we will do another one. Just because, you know, that game was incredibly quick, which is sort of the point of aggressive decks like this. Alrighty, so here we are, another game, and now against Germany. And this is the card that I've been looking for. So the 101st Infantry fits into this deck so well, for a couple different reasons, and there is the reason I am looking for. It is the Henschel. Now, obviously, the main card you want to get 101st on is the Hummer, because if you have a Hummer, whether it's 0 op or not, if you can get a Hummer and a 101st, it means the Hummer is going to grow by +2/+2 every turn, as well as that +1/+1 happens before the attack actually happens. So I could go for a Jaeger Regiment. This, okay, as Stranglehold. I'm just gonna pass. Also, what a Fizzlairs into Stranglehold. Bizarre. Now, unfortunately, this does mess up the combo of playing it on Henschel. Or sorry, on the... Yes, this is the Henschel. These are both Henschels, despite one being a bomber, one being a fighter. This stays alive. Okay, let's drop the 101st. Hopefully this survives. And let's risk it. Start getting this growing. Okay, so it's not the entrapment. We dodged the entrapment bullet, which is nice. Obviously, if it was entrapment, we would be in a somewhat rough spot, but... Like, this attacks as a 3/4 and then a 4/5. And it can attack twice on that turn. What is he gonna do? Interesting he hits this. I'm not exactly sure what that is about. I can also diversify the threats. So, like, look at this. 101st on units with Fury. Absolutely insane. I'm actually running a 4 stack of 101st in this deck. And it also gives CA something that it was missing, which is good cards in the deck that are a little bit larger, a little bit more sticky, and can sort of give you slightly more threats. That's really annoying. So now we're just going to flood the board. We know our opponent's playing German Japan discard, inexplicably with Stranglehold and Fusiliers. And like, look at this. 2/5 body is so difficult to get rid of. I feel like this is a unit that will be nerfed to a 2/4 in the near future. A lot of people don't remember this, but the Panzer H, the one that draws a card, well, that's actually really annoying. I could just try getting him for 8. It does let him clear this, and it is somewhat giving up on board, at least for the time being. But it also means it's going to be difficult for him to not... Like, what? He's going to annihilate this and then hit this, and if he doesn't win, like, the 1 and 4. Second island defense, fair enough, but that means more units stick. Or second island defense into sudden strike. Please. So we could just keep trying to get him win with Comet. He should run out of healing eventually, in theory. I think it's fine to push Hummer. Although actually... Yeah, I think it's fine to push Hummer. This is sort of actually a very good example of where CA falters. Is if you can't get off to a good start, these units are really, really small on their own. Now we see if this guy holds up a credit or not. So, he does hold up the credit. Hopefully it's not Stranglehold. Maybe I should actually play 35T. Okay, so it is Careless Talk. And now, hopefully he does not have third island defense. We win in 2 turns. You could also have Guard, but there's not a lot of Guard in this deck. I think his main way is just going to be trying to discard me. He's drawn. And does not hold up a countermeasure. Now, surely there's no way I die here, right? So if he has healing or if he has Guide, we lose. So that's just true. So this happens every time. Now we can hit this, lower the damage on board. I don't think there's a world where this guy kills me next turn. I simply don't think so. Now obviously he could have like Burst of Fire Honor on FW, but if you're running Burst of Fire Honor and German Japan discard, then you deserve to win. That's a really good top deck. That is very, very bad. Well, he's thinking, so that's good. We're going to keep cards in hand, so it's harder for him to discard Comet. We have more units to play out into countermeasures. So if he Wolfpacks here, we win 75% of the time. Start with Henschel. And get him. So yeah, that is Combined Arms. Another really fun deck. This one's incredibly cheap to make. You did see me win that game largely off of the Comet, but if we take a look at the deck, the main things of the deck are turn 1 Hummer into turn 2 Jaeger Combined Arms, and all 3 of these are standards. The other key cards of the deck, Panzer A, just another Blitz tank that costs 1 to try to Combined Arms on, also a standard. 35Ts, it's okay in this deck. You don't run the most infantry ever, but it's a limited. Another card that's popular to put in this deck, but I'm experimenting without running it, is the 5th Parachute Brigade, another standard card. Henschel is another way to buff your tanks, also a standard card. 101st, which I'm really loving in this deck, Standard, Blitzkrieg, Limited, that, you start with. So, all around, deck is very, very cheap. Of course, you do have the more expensive cards, like Heinkel, Comet, Autocannon. These are just, the solid aggro, German Elites, Greif. Plus a few very, very useful specials like Martyr, Paracy. This is going to let you get through huge guards. And, of course, the Henschel. This is just something I'm having fun with because of how well it works with 101st. But, it's a really solid deck. Really recommend trying, especially if you have a lower collection. This deck is going to get you very, very fast wins. Maybe not as high of a win rate as some of the other decks that I prefer to play, but it's certainly one of the fastest decks. Alright, so now we are on to another deck, and this is another deck that if you are very new to the game, you might not recognize, or if you're new to sort of looking at what the top meta is, you might not recognize this deck. It is Soviet Japan Self-Damage. This is a very, very fun deck. It plays very, very uniquely. The idea is you want cards that damage your HQ, that damage your own units, and then you run a bunch of different cards that sort of gain benefits out of it. Very, very high tempo. And of course, similarly to CA, we saw less play after a series of nerfs to the deck, but it is back after a series of very, very good Japan cards from Brothers in Arms. Namely, Dragon Slayer is just sort of a card you throw in the deck because it's good. I'm even going to consider keeping it because against what is presumably Jagro, it's already a very favored matchup, and if it's not Jagro, then turn 4 Dragon Slayer is going to be really good. And the other card that really helps in this deck is the Island Defense. Because Island Defense means that you are so much less worried about taking damage in this deck. Because previously you had cards like Engineers, but you didn't really like Engineers because, one, you need units to die, and two, you need to draw Engineers. It makes your Zukovs worse. It means Zukovs hit 34th less, and it has to stick around for a while to sort of get healing. And then Great Patriotic War, it's a really good card to play, but it's not exactly, Now, I can get one more draw off of... So, I have a couple different plays here. I could just Red Dawn this and slam 34th push. Don't like that because then I can't Red Dawn a Sendai. I could Winter Warfare trade, play 34th, which gets me 2 draws off the recon, but it means I no longer have Winter Warfare in case of a Void Flood. I could Sickle trade 34th, but then, I'm just drawing one less card. At this point in the game, I don't think card draw is going to matter too much, so let's just start with the Sickle. Now, normally you want to draw first before playing Bloody Sickle in case you draw another 34th, which would have been traded like this, but there is actually a world where I draw into a card that makes me not trade. Like if I do into a second Winter Warfare, I'd consider just playing that. But anyways, the way this deck works, if you haven't seen it before, is... And apologies, I'm about to get derailed again. I think I just go all in to kill this, and we get another 34th down. Oh, and we actually get to keep the, Yeah, well, basically the point of the deck is exactly what I'm doing right now. See, we've played 3 Bloody Sickles, 2 Red Dawns, we've dealt 10 damage to ourselves, but in the process, we have discounted the cost of these 34th guards down to 0, so we have 2 of them. And our opponent's just going to go right ahead and surrender because I have 12/12 worth of stats on the board by turn 5 at the cost of half my health. However, you can't deal the 10 remaining damage if I have 6 sixes in the front line. So, yeah, I think that game pretty much shows, well, how self-damage works. So let's just, for the sake of keeping this video, on the shorter side. Well, it's probably still going to be like over an hour, let's be honest, but, we don't need... We've seen self-damage. It was also played in the most recent OCC if you want to see more gameplay of this. A couple other cards I would like to call out attention to that also came from Brothers in Arms that helps buff the deck is Well, first, just the island defense, like I mentioned. So, in that situation, let's say our opponent hadn't surrendered and they had more answers. Like, they had a bunch of blitz things to take out the first 34th Guards, and then a Sendai to take out the second 34th Guards, or maybe a Signal Regiment to start pressuring my HQ. I was at 10 health, which is very, very concerning, especially against a Ger Aggro deck. However, Island's defense means that you set yourself down to 10 health, and you gain all of the benefits of taking damage, which would be the 34th Guards getting cheaper, the 456th the Rifles Regiment getting larger. And then you play Island defense to heal all of that health back and draw a card, which is just so much better than other forms of healing in this deck, like the old Great Patriotic War for healing felt terrible. Engineer is not that great. Road to Berlin, terrible. Island defense, so good. Of course, there's the Dragon Slayer, but the other, and maybe even more important than Island defense, to be completely honest, is the Stand Together. Why is... there we go. So this is a card that was released in Brothers in Arms, and I think a lot of people actually really underestimated this card. I believe I rated this card quite highly. I think this card is very, very good. And the reason it's very, very good is it replaces the old Red Banner. So Red Banner, if we just take a look at Red Banner here, this card used to be very, very popular in Self-Damage. This was sort of an idea really pushed by Birdo Burrito and saw a ton of success with. And the point of Red Banner is you would play it on a 34th Guard. And previously, this was back when 34th Guard costed 6. There was 2 8-cost Soviet units, the 6-7 Guard that summons a light infantry, or 272nd. So, 2 credits, get a 272nd, especially if you have a 6-1 34th Guards, or maybe you're against aggro and you want a guard, so you play 34th Guards and then play Red Banner to get a guaranteed guard unit. Yeah, very good. However, then they made 34th Guards cost 7, which means you no longer get 25th or 272nd, but rather 222nd or ISU. And these are fine, but just substantially worse units overall. And of course, you could run Euro factories to still get this, but then it's worse on other units because, you'd rather turn SU into a 5-drop than a 4-drop, etc. So, what does this have to do with Stand Together? Well, Stand Together is destroy friendly infantry, add a Soviet tank with the same cost, give it Blitz for 1 cost. So, now obviously there's less versatility. You can no longer play it on SUs, you can't play it on T80s, you can't play it on Yak 7 to stop damaging yourself, whatever it needs to be. There is slightly less utility with the card. Just in terms of what you can play it on. However, if you compare it to Red Banner on 34th Guards or Ural Factory on 34th Guards, rather than spend 2 credits to get a large unit, and there is the possibility that that large unit is going to be very high in value, but it is really a very tempo inefficient play, because you're spending 2 credits to keep the same number of units on the board, and then hope that the unit you get is higher in value than the unit you currently have on the board at the cost of 1 card and 2 credits. However, if you play Stand Together, it's 1 credit, and you get a 7-cost Soviet tank. And if you look, there is only 1 7-cost Soviet tank, which is the KV-2. It's a 6-5 heavy armor 2, cannot be pinned, cannot be attacked by artillery or air units. This unit is a beast, and Stand Together gives it Blitz. So what that means is you can have a 34th Guards in the front line, attack into the HQ for 6, and then for 4 credits, you can turn that 34th Guards into a KV-2 and attack face again with it to deal an additional 6 damage. This can just be a 12 damage, 5 credits burst combo for a single card if you have a 34th in the front line. That can get through Island defense. If you want to run Great Patriotic War in this deck still, that's just a straight up OTK, one combined with Great Patriotic War, which you actually have the credits to do so. Or maybe you're behind on board, your opponent has a huge threat in the front line that you need to deal with, and you don't have, it's too large to kill with sickles. You play 34th Guards, you play Stand Fast, and then you trade into it with the KV-2. It's also just a solid unit to turn something into, turn a 34th into a KV-2. if your opponent has like some sort of Paraseed Bomber thing going on, or maybe just a lot of planes if they have a Sexton that's destroying your board. KV2, really, really, really difficult to destroy, and it can still, of course, be played on the 456th rifles to turn it into either a BT7, a BT7 1937, or a T80. You know, it's not going to be as high in value, but it's still a little bit of an extra burst combo if you're looking for a little extra damage. So, long story short, Stand Together, absolutely insane in self-damage. And again, I would strongly recommend you give this deck a try. This deck does... It's a little bit more expensive. The core of the deck is, again, very, very cheap, which is going to be 4 Bloody Sickles, 4 Red Dawns, 4 34th Guards, 4 456th Rifle Regiments. These are all standards. And sort of the core of the deck, of course, 3 Winter Warfare's limiteds. But the problem is the main draw engine of the deck is 2 33rd Recons and 2 Scouting Parties, both of which are specials, and both of which are specials that are not run in almost any other deck, meaning that they're a little lower down on the priority for spending wildcards on. But, you know, up to you. If you have it, try it out. If you don't have it, maybe try out a slightly worse version of the deck. You can actually run this without Japan Ally. So if you actually look, we're running 7 Japanese cards, which is 2 Recons and 2 Scouting Parties for draw, 2 Island Defense, just because it's a really good card, and Dragon Slayer because it's a really good card. You could actually swap this out for Britain Ally and just run 4 Convoys, and that's probably better if you're a free-to-play player who's lacking the Recons or the Scouting Parties. And, you know, you can run something like Evasive Action to stop Leopold's or Churchill Alvarez. You can run maybe even like a Secret Ops if you want to stop things like Lion for a Day, Defend in Depth, whatever it is. So yeah, Britain Ally, self-damage also very, very fine. And, you know, fun deck. So with that, that is enough talking about self-damage. Let's get into playing the next deck. Alright, so here we have, well, it's German mid-range, US German mid-range side. However, this is a slightly different deck, version of the deck that you are probably used to seeing. This is by no means the meta version. Nobody else is playing this, trust me. This is 100% my own creation. And this is where we start to get off the beaten path. The first 3 decks we looked at, Ger Aggro, Combined Arms, Self-Damage, you'll see this all the time on ladder. And, you know, you'll find very good success with it. Now, Frontline is a deck that I really, really love. I probably have played it more so than any other player. I probably have more success on it than any other player. And it was hit relatively hard by the rotation with the loss of 32nd and Patrol, which are both just very solid in the meta right now. And also it was hit with the fact that US got absolutely nothing. Just, there is very little new to add to the deck. If you play the deck in the way the deck is traditionally been played in the last year and a half, which is to say with Blitzkriegs, a lot of Blitz tanks, Greyhounds in the deck, just trying to get the front line, Blitzkrieg out your opponent. Now, that is not the only way to play the deck. And some people, if you've been around for a long time, might remember that the way the deck was played a long time ago was slightly different. And this is sort of a way that the deck was played that I very much pioneered with Island Hopping. And you just played it slower, you just tried to build a big board, and pressure your opponent out with the ability to output a lot of damage if you want, but without actually doing it. Oh, that's quite interesting. Our opponent has, either they're not running a full stack of 24ths, or they have gone quite unfortunate. Yeah, let's just go ahead and take this out. So, what I have here is sort of building off of that same principle, where it's relatively teched against a discard at the moment, which is not as popular on ladder as one might have expected. Let's play it on this side. Basically, the idea of this deck is you have the traditional Blitz take the front line, you have 4 Shermans as draw, you have 4 Greyhounds, 2 Red Devils fight against the Cavalry regiments and the Bicycle regiments from Ger Aggro, try to take the front line against Heinz or Combined Arms. This is not great. Please don't... Oh, okay. It killed the... Wow. Okay. It killed the 101st. Wait. Well, my train of thought is being derailed once again. However, this is a very interesting position because I can hit this and then push up an 8/8 5th Rangers. I can just play We Can Do It and hit it, which is sort of what I'm leaning towards. However, if I'm doing that, do I play Hellcat? I think so. So, where it differs from Frontline in the rest of the deck is instead of running the 30 seconds, the combat engineers, a lot of other cheap stuff to try to take advantage of the fact that you have the front line, you know, the 99ths, the people who run 20 seconds. Instead, what this deck runs is a lot of 4-cost units, a lot of these big, slower guys. I know we just won the game, and I will play another game on the deck, but I think it's best to show off this deck just to show what I'm talking about here. So you see there's the 2 Red Devils, there's the 2 Greyhounds, the PIR, and that's where things sort of start to diverge. Is I'm running 3 copies of the Milk Truck. I originally started with War Machines. I do prefer the Milk Truck. Just, you know, it sticks around. You'd ideally have a 1-drop that you're spending credits with anyways on turn 2. So, you know, you cannot play War Machine on turn 2. Plus, you know, you'd like to play Schützen on turn 4. And if you play War Machine, you can't play it on turn 3 and attack. But you see this deck has 4 Shermans, 3 5th Rangers, but then it has 2 M4A1s for the anti-discard tech. Then you have 2 Schützens. We have the 2 We Can Do It. We have a P51B. We have 2 batteries, triple 1st Marines. So that we're really trying to nail down the mid-sized Blitz units. So the mid-sized Blitz units are supposed to contest the much smaller units of aggressive decks and sort of get 2-for-1 trades, and you lose a little bit on the early game tempo, and then you try to make it up by just playing non-stop Blitz units that are going to try to retake the board and eventually win. And against Control, you just try to win by having more value in your deck than you otherwise would. And then the big card in this deck that I just absolutely love is Island Hopping. This is one of my favorite cards in the game. The value you can get out of this card is just absolutely insane, bar none except for maybe Comet. Island Hopping is, you give the enemy HQ an effect. If this HQ has taken 3 damage or more this turn, a random friendly unit gets +2/+2. And what this means is against an aggro deck, against a control deck, especially something like Japan-Poland, where they'll have 3, 4, maybe even 5 ways to fully clear the board, you don't have to play out 3 or 4 units to try to pressure out your opponent. You can have 1 unit if you have Island Hopping up. Because if you have just 1st Marines on the board, it's just a 3/4. Without Island Hopping, it's just a 3/4. If you have Blitzkrieg, you need to play other units to get value out of it, or else Blitzkrieg is just, 3 damage once. With Island Hopping, that 1st Marines is actually a 5/6 if your opponent doesn't deal with it. And if your opponent doesn't deal with it after that, it's actually a 7/8. And then it is a 9/10. And that 1 1st Marines, 1 unit on its own, is threatening to just end the game in like 4 or 5 turns. And if your opponent kills it, you can just play out another unit. And that is the beauty of this deck. Then you have other ways to trigger Island Hopping without even needing to spend the credits to attack HQ, with 2 copies of Battery. With the Schützen, this is my favorite combo. You get an Island Hopping up, and then you play Schützen, you attack into something in the front line to trigger Island Hopping with the 3 damage the Schützen deals if you trigger the Veteran. Strategic Bombing, of course. And then, honestly, P51B just seems like a really solid card to me right now. There's not a lot of great ways to deal with it. There's not a lot of bounce right now in the current meta. So you almost always get the Destruction effect to trigger, which is just, a little extra help. And then there's also 3 copies of the 101st. This is going to help you out by making your Red Devils and Greyhounds work better later in the game. And with that, let's start jumping back into the queue. And yeah, let's get into a second game with this deck. Alright, so here we are in the second game. Just gonna mulligan, keeping Engineers, looking for a 1-drop, and this is a pretty solid hand. Now this is really the beauty of this deck, is cards like a Greyhound and like Red Devils. If you play them on turn 1, they're just really solid units, contest the board, slow your opponent down, and try to get into your milk trucks, into these larger units in your hand. However, later in the game, they're actually perfectly fine, whether it's just spending 2 credits to be able to draw with Sherman without having to spend more credits committing to the board, or it's you know, is just applying extra pressure on the board, getting another unit to potentially proc an island defense on, getting another unit to buff with We Can Do It, or in combination with 101st. Just a very, very solid card. Now here, our opponent has had the double Arty start, which is a little annoying. It means we are going to have to sacrifice Pathfinders. We've gotten rid of one of the Archys. Now, here I think the best line is probably just 32nd into P51B. Like, I don't think there's a whole lot we can do about this Arty at the moment. Pick Signal Regiment, that's interesting. We still don't technically know what deck he's playing. I'm assuming that it is discard, just based on the fact that he's running Arty, Air Sub, Soulful Japan. Japan Poland control usually doesn't run Air Sub, and oh boy. You know, Ger Aggro usually doesn't run Air Sub either. And this is another sort of little bit of synergy coming together in this deck, is the First Marines is so good at the smokescreen you get on your HQ. There's so much support line threats in the meta right now. You just play First Marines and you're safe for a turn. Whether you use that turn to start picking off your opponent's threats or just develop a huge board in the front line and your opponent can't just try to race you. It's just really, really solid, and actually our opponent presumably is going to surprise attack this. Still not entirely sure what he's playing. It's like Ger Aggro control hybrid. It's bizarre. And we can actually Hellcat 101st to take out this Dragon Slayer. The other possibility would just to be push to First Marines into the front line, just try to, you know, slow them down. I'm leaning towards the Hellcat line. Just making sure there's no countermeasures before we go in for this play around Underfire and take out the threat. Also, with the Belt Trucks, you get a pretty decent amount of healing in this deck that I feel like the front line, like 6 extra healing is actually quite a bit. 6 extra healing and the ability to get Smokescreen saves you a lot over the course of a game. And okay, so it is discard. It's just discard with Type 94s, which isn't unheard of. Absolutely not, but this is a bit of an issue, though. So we don't have an answer for Signal Regiment. Really, like there's Battery, but you know we don't have an answer in hand. I want to spend 3 credits this turn on this, which means 6 credits from hand. There's not really an efficient way to spend 6 credits from hand. What if I do Schützen? So that's 5. Yeah, let's just start to get him. Keep him out of island defense range. Now, with the downside of taking out the things like the 35Ts and the Whirlwinds is, and of course the Blitzkrieg, is you have slightly less, well, by slightly I mean you have substantially less burst potential. This is just a deck that goes off of the board. Sky Barons, that is going to draws 2 cards, buff up some guys. He continues to pressure face. Another Type 94, that's kind of annoying. Does he pin the 7/7? No, he does not. So actually what's pretty cool about this is that means we can just push First Marines, and I could island hopping, but I want a milk truck. Just there's a lot of ways to spend 12 credits next turn, and getting healing in is never a bad thing. So if he has Underfire, he has Underfire. I don't think he's just going to be able to burst me down. Goes for to the last man. And let's just get up another island hopping. And do we want to Sherman M4A1, Sherman push 5th Rangers? There's a lot of options here. Interesting. I'm going to push 5th Rangers. This gives them an under fire target, but I really like the Sherman here just because if we can draw it into another, well, that's annoying. If we can draw into any type of health gain, we can do it. Is health gain. I should not have played these guys next to each other. If he underfires, we're in a very bad spot. There is not a way to weaken do it and apply more pressure on the board, so maybe just we can do a push to be credit efficient. So we're not dead to Shiden, not dead to Kika. This is 6, 7, so Hellcat top deck is lethal. We also have another Sherman. Oh, is he just gonna Shiden me? What's he thinking? Oh, is he thinking just like island defense in here? That's kind of bizarre. Okay. So we can clear Shiden for 6 credits. Well, guess we're just going to die to Kika, which is unfortunate. I mean, a lot of health, but not enough health to get through Shiden and Kika. This is the issue with this deck. Now, if only I could run island defenses in my deck. You saw at the end there we had 9 cards, all of which were just, you know, very solid units that can generate value, that can generate threats on board, but it doesn't really matter if your opponent is just going to kill you from hand, or from the support line. Because, you know, maybe I can try to find a way to put half-tracks back in the deck, because it is lacking that bit of tempo there. But, you know, the point of this deck is not to be this is the same thing as the control decks in the previous video. The point of this deck is not to be a exact list meta breaker, but, you know, try out different combinations of cards like the Schutzen and the island hopping. So we now move away from this deck, and we're going to be moving on into some definitely more questionable waters out. Some decks you probably have not seen. Certainly not at least for a long time. So let's move on to the next game. All right. So, this here, it is. You probably have no idea what I'm playing, just based on my opening hand. Well, let's mulligan like this. Here, it might start to. The picture might start to become more clear. So, we are a Soviet-US deck. We got the Yaks. Got Lesser of Two Evils. And, yeah. Yeah, this should be the dead giveaway. With the anti-tank gun, this is Soviet-US Arty. Now, this is another bit of a throwback deck that a lot of newer players might not be super familiar with, because this deck... What's the best way to describe Arty? This deck used to be the most dominant deck on ladder by a pretty huge margin. It is difficult to understate how absolutely insane this deck was. And then they nerfed it. Like, very severely nerfed it. And then it was still a tier 1 deck. And then they had to nerf it a second time. So, what is the strength of Arty? Arty, you know, standing for artillery. Also, just like to point out that the Shinano here is very unfortunate for us. The strength that Arty brings to the table is, I mean, what it gets its name for. The cheap artilleries you just spam out onto the board. And that's actually just enough against a lot of decks, because anything aggressive, if they are not able to answer your constant wave of artilleries, these things will just absolutely tear your opponent to pieces. And then you have very easy and cheap ways to buff them with US Ally, with the Greyhounds, with the 10th Engineers. And then on the card draw side of things, you have... that's an unfortunate draw right there. On the card drop, you have Lesser of Two Evils, plus Supply Chains. And then you run War Production. So the way the deck used to work is you ran, 4 Supply Chains, 3 Lesser of Two Evils, and 3 War Productions, and basically you would just cheat credits. Like, you would cheat out 1 or 2 artilleries on turn 1, and then you would just crush any aggro deck. Any aggro deck, you can't answer that. You are just going to get so much guaranteed board advantage for the rest of the game. Also, the best aggro decks at the time were tank-based decks, so if you could cheat out a turn 1 anti-tank gun, the game's over. Literally just straight over, 0 chance. And then Supply Chain actually used to be able to go down to 0, so you would literally just have an infinite amount of free draw. Now, that was the first nerf to the deck, so, you know, you don't have an infinite amount of free draw. I can't just, draw 20 cards this turn. Which is, you know, pretty reasonable. And then the Arty was hit by rotation because of the fact that they lost Ura. Ura in this deck, absolutely crushing. So you would convert your huge board advantage. Yeah, let's just play it. You would win by converting your huge board advantage into just tons of burst damage with cards like Ura, like Patriotic Firestorm, which that used to cost 1. That was another card that was nerfed to hit Arty. Cards like KV really help you get across the line. And just constant pressure pouring out at the enemy HQ. And the reason I'm playing it now is just because there's a lot of slower ground-based decks that aren't running a ton of removal. So, also, Supply Chain is just anti-discard tech, which is nice. But that is really what Arty preys on. It fell into popularity because of, you know, all of the constant nerfs, and Ger Aggro started to be a bit of a losing matchup because of just more refined Ger Aggro lists. Akitas could be really, really bothersome. once they went down to 3 order, Ger Aggro just, you know, hitting Desperate and Bombing Raid on such consistency, it's really, really frustrating. And, yeah, it's fallen out of favor, but playing it right now, feels very good. And actually, just looking at what our opponent has, is there a world where we have lethal here? If KV can connect HQ... I don't think so. I don't think there's a way to kill him this turn. Oh, actually, I think we miss out on a supply chain. Yeah, that's not the end of the world. Now, how does he remove this? Maybe I should have hit the 24th Cavalry, just to force the overdraw, and deal 2 more damage. I'm running Alliance just to give these units a bit more meat. I'll type 94. Actually, I should have done that. He played the Dina. This does mean he can't heal. And he picks this off. I really misplayed that. And the other thing that gives this deck a lot of burst is the 3 Katyushas and 2 copies of Ziz. Unfortunately, we don't have any of those in our hand. So, let's just draw a whole bunch of cards, make a discard relatively useless for him for the rest of the game. We could try forcing the overdraw. Actually, we don't have the credits to do that. Could just pass. It's probably a good idea to take this out. This is going to let him remove Chaika, but I actually kind of want him to remove Chaika at this point, just so I can get cards onto the board. So a pretty big drawback in Arty is the board slots. If you could have like 5 units in the support line, Arty would get substantially better. Gonna actually overdraw me. This is actually annoying because these cost credits now. Is he gonna... Well, if he was bombing rated, presumably he would have pinged this one. Okay, so we can take out the Chaika, still, because these have 0 op cost. I can force a lot of overdraws. It's a pretty funny card to overdraw myself. Now, I'm also running Bryansk's in this list just to try to protect Artys on the board. And, you know, not take too much damage. Am I going to be pushing engineers? Okay, bombing raid discarded is very big for us. Get a Chaika on the board, so if you to the last mans, we have something left. Raiding Brigade is also another very big card to see go. We have a lot of the burst left in our deck. Both alliances being gone is very sad. This guy continues to overdraw us. So this is 7 damage on board. Oh, also, this is another one of the Brothers in Arms cards that really helped this deck out, is the BM13N. And by another, I mean, that's actually might be the only Brothers in Arms cards in this deck. Arty is sort of a call based on what's like currently, popular in the meta as a tech against. Now, here's a good question. Do I just go in? It lets him heal. However, I'm actually dealing more damage. Maybe I should have 99th instead. I'm dealing more damage than he gains additional healing. If he had just played a island defense normally. And this guy is very, very dead. It might not look it, because we have basically no burst in our hand. But knowing what's left in the deck... Well, this is just straight lethal on its own. But if we draw some cards really quickly... there's Ziz, which can blitz out an additional Arty. You can get 2 Artys and give them both blitz with Ziz. And this is the card we didn't draw the entire game, was 10th Engineers Battalion. This card is huge. So, for example, if you have 10th Engineers Battalion, say you have, like, 1 Arty sticks on board. Like, you have an AA gun, sticks on board because of the smoke screen. You can play 10th Engineers Battalion, push up like a Greyhound to the front line. 10th Engineers Battalion, you attack HQ for 4 with the AA gun, and then you play Ziz and a second AA gun, both adjacent to the 10th Engineers Battalion, giving the second AA gun blitz, meaning you can now play, you can now attack a face for an additional 9 damage. So, starting with 1 AA gun on board, you're dealing 13 plus an attack from the Greyhound. There's also Katyushas, which can be played out. Then, of course, I'm running the Alliance, but you can run Patriotic Firestorm for a bit more of an aggressive version of this deck. If 10th Engineers sticks on the board, you can push it to the front line and deal an additional damage with the Greyhound. You can War Production to get more credits in if you need. This deck has just such crazy burst potential. And, anti-discard tech is always good in the current meta. So this is Arty. This is a bit more of the expensive side, but it's also a deck that is really, really fun to play. Very unique in playstyle. There's not a lot of decks that utilize a lot of artilleries in this game. So yeah, I would strongly recommend giving this deck a play. And let's get on to the next game. Alrighty, so here we have what is Tokens. Just your classic Soviet-US Tokens. And honestly, again, I think this deck is in a really decent spot in this meta. I'm not saying it's tier 1, I'm not even saying it's tier 2, but I think it's in a better spot in this meta than it was previously. Now, Zukov guarantees draw motors. Motors or... there's 1 Engineers in the deck. I don't actually want motors. Well, here, I'll keep 1 Zukov. This is the card I'm looking for, reserves. The reason I'm keeping it is I played against this guy. I think I played against this guy right before I started recording. He's on Tony, like OTK, Japan, US Tony. So keeping a guaranteed guard or healing, either one, pretty nice. And now it's going to be guaranteed. And honestly, now that I'm looking at this curve, I wish I'd kept the motors rather than the Zukov, because this 1 credit is going to screw me up a little bit. Okay, Torres. Didn't see that last time I played against him. And there's the motors. So sad. Yeah, I'm gonna get the Engineers down, get the Zukov motors into hand, and this is already quite a depressing looking game. There's gonna be very little I can do. Lesser of Two Evils is a fun card that I've been testing around. I could actually just, blitz up a motors here. Just because, you know, if you have like an extra light infantry in hand, you're fine discarding that. I also have supply chain in this deck. Only a couple. For, you know, more anti-discard tech. This is... you could tell this was in my anti-discard phase. Well, we can always discard the hammer if we don't find one. And with 2 hammers, definitely going to be discarding that. This is easily the worst hand I have had on tokens, and I've played maybe like 25 or 30 games with this deck so far this season. And our opponent, on the other hand, is, yep, really just having a fun time. So, we're not... Oh, come on. 1 turn too late. Here, let's just get out some light infantry. I mean, the great thing about tokens is you're always like 1 no surrender away from coming back in the game. Maybe not in this case, because it'll probably just slam like a Sheedan and start killing me, but... Interestingly, hits the engineers, because he has another turret. I literally didn't see this guy play a single turret last time I fought him. Now suddenly he's on that anti-tokens tech. This is just horrendously depressing. There we go, something to play. And now that actually the board is cleared, no surrender means this draws 4 cards. Just he in the HQ. Feels pretty bad. And there it is. Alright, so now things are going to start rolling. This actually is close to over... Well, this will overdraw if I don't get a 1-cost card to play, and I don't think there's a 1-cost card to play that doesn't draw or add cards to hand. I will sickle this. Generally speaking, going odd health does not change the lethal breaks for Tony OTK. Since the main way they're going to be killing you is with burst of fire. Alright, well this guy's just going to fully clear, which is absolutely fine by me. Close combat overdraw. Very unfortunate. Well, this is a bit of a draw last situation. But this is the problem with tokens. This is sort of what tokens does, is you just wave after wave of your own men. We did nothing for a very long time, and then suddenly just 8 units in the front line. Over and over and over. And now our opponent is actually seriously under threat here. And if he goes face here, it's just over. We saw he tried to clear the front line for 1 turn, and now we do this. Deep operation, light infantry, deep operation, light infantry, and then playing out the new spearhead, and then why not throw on an extra frontal assault. And suddenly, after having done absolutely nothing for several turns in a row, we hit our opponent for 24. And that right there is tokens. Tokens really at its finest, doing absolutely nothing, getting a pretty bad opening hand against a very, very good opening hand, and then just, you know, closing out the game. Now, here is my list. You got 4 reserves. This is really what you're looking for. 3 lesser, 2 supply chain as sort of the main card draw. Of course, the staple card draw of tokens is the Industrial Might, because if you play No Surrender Industrial Might, that's just a Lend-Lease right there. That also gives you 4 Blitz guys. And then the rest of the deck, not too special. The only Brothers in Arms cards in this deck is Spearhead, and I absolutely love Spearhead. And actually, my favorite thing to do with Spearhead, you can't even do in this deck, but we will be able to do in the next deck, which we'll play immediately after this one. But Spearhead, very strong, close combat. These are... I mean, you have cards like Frontal Assault, which is Frontal Assault and Motors, and we can do it. These are going to buff up your light infantry that you get from reserves, from deep operations, from No Surrender. And really the point of this is to keep them alive. Sometimes let them trade slightly better. Unity as strength is to generate a single threat If you just, stick one token in the front line, spam a bunch of infantry in the support line, unity is strength, and suddenly it's like a 7/7. And then you have your kill combos of close combat, just ludicrous damage, and Spearhead. Spearhead is just so powerful. 2 cost for +3/+3. And you saw how we use it. We just generated some tokens, threw them on the board for 1 credit each, and then Spearhead is +3/+3 for the rest of your units. Very, very strong. And of course, you can do +2/+2, keep some units alive. It lets you kill things for engineers, for healing. You can attack with 3 units, then Spearhead them to attack with the other 2 for +3/+3. Just a very all-around, very, very good card. Absolutely love it. And, love tokens. But we have another deck to show. This one is called Silly. This one's literally just called Silly. So let's just jump into it. All right. So as I'm sure you can tell because of this 24th regiment, you might at first think, wait, this looks like tokens. And then you see the 24th. This is, in fact, Japan ally tokens. Now, I suggested the possibility somewhat recently of potentially being able to do tokens with a different ally. I think I mentioned it in my card review, my Brothers in Arms review, when I talked about Spearhead. I said maybe this lets you play tokens without US ally, because previously tokens was US ally because you needed unity of strength, you needed alliance, you needed we can do it, and you needed industrial might. And that is 4 cards that you absolutely needed, and there's very little replacement for. But Japan, you have 24th Cavalry Regiment. And you have some other things. So, you have 56th Recon, which is, just solid infantry. Helps you out a bit against sort of the hordes of, aggro. And you might be wondering why I have 3 321st Rifle Regiments in hand. And if you were wondering that, I would say that is an excellent question. Why am I running it in this deck and not in the other deck? And there's 2 reasons. Well, there's one reason why I'm running it in this deck and not the other deck, and then there's another reason why I'm just running it in general. Hopefully we aren't about to get destroyed by under fire next turn. Let's just push units to the front line. This is the 7th Japanese deck in a row I have fought, just by the way. If you're watching the video, you're probably a bit confused. You're like, no, Jaking, you're wrong. You've only fought 6. I played a game, which I did not record because I accidentally queued up with Arty again. And this is looking like another discard. So, I could actually... Do I just go for it? Do I ever just go for it? I think I'm gonna go for it. So, things are about to get real silly real fast. Well... Here's the problem. I could hit motors. We're gonna go for it just to show off what I'm talking about. I don't necessarily think this is the correct play. Please tell me that attacked HQ. Alright. So, what I did right there is, 1, just use Spearhead to trigger my own Recon to kill his 2 units. And 2, Recon actually... Or the Spearhead triggers... The buff of the Spearhead triggers after destruction effects resolve. Meaning, if you destroy a unit that summons another unit, like Chaika, or like 321st, you will actually be getting... the unit it summons will be getting the buff. So it basically lets you play out early Spearheads much more efficiently. So I'm losing the 1/2 body at the benefit of an additional +1/+1 for all other cards. That is really annoying. Our opponent had an incredible answer to it. And also just, the fact that he did have... those cards. So I'm worried that he's just gonna, you know, trade in with double cavalry. Well, that lets me actually double push on the following turn. So here he's probably just going to take out both of these with his 2 remaining cavalry regiments. I forget if he has 2 or 1 left. He might only have 1, now that I'm thinking about it. Well, Raiding Brigade's going to work as well. Does this draw? This does not draw. Doesn't mean he doesn't have one, though. Well, Spearhead's not the card you want to draw in this situation. So, you know, this is not a great matchup, Japan-German discard. But, we'll probably play another one if this is just how this one ends, because there is something I did want to show off in particular with this deck, other than the fun Spearhead combo. Also, you know, 24th Cavalry is just really good in this deck. Yep, let's just get out some more infantry. Hopefully he goes face with Dragon Slayer. I don't think he's going to. This guy doesn't seem that bad. And Wolfpack. Might go face now. I forget, do I have another one of these? If I have another one of these, I might want to hit the Arado even. So this is... I mean, okay, if there's any way I win this game, it's like this. I don't think it... Like, this would require him to not trade and also not kill me and also not discard. And also not heal and also not play guard. Okay, that's definitely not how I thought he was going to do that. I mean, I'm probably just dead to Case Yellow, but... This is sort of the threat that Tokens generates, is like, even a couple of 1/1s, you are terrified. You don't know what's about to happen. Is it the Case Yellow lethal? The Shenano? Not guaranteed lethal. Shiden's lethal. Bombing Raid is lethal. Well, it's not Case Yellow anymore. Well, double 61st is gonna be pretty good. Yeah, there's a Matsumoto. Do a little extra burn damage. And that's part of sort of something that this deck is capable of doing. You might be wondering, why are you running the Matsumoto? Like, yes, I have the 321sts, the 1/2 blitzers, and yes, I have the recons. Sure, I have the 24th Cavalries, but that's not a lot of destruction effects. That's a decent number of destruction effects. So why am I running the Matsumoto? Like, you know, it's a solid body. It's a infantry. Is this another Japan? It is another Japan. I just full keep. Like, not a bad hand. And I think I'd rather start with reserves. Surely that this is not another Japan-German discard. If this is another Japan-German discard, this is going to be the last game. Because I'm getting very sick and tired of playing against Japan-German discard. I think of 5 of my last 6 games have been against Japan-German discard. Oh boy. Just tons of fun. I can thank Baron for that one. So I'm still not seeing the combo yet. Okay, well, every card he's played so far is not particularly clear as to what he is playing. This might help us. Not really, to be completely honest. I haven't seen anybody play this in either discard or Ger Aggro since Feigned. But I'm just gonna push up, take control of the front line. And I mean, he has double surprise attack, but we're not running Unity of Strength, so we don't have to worry about any huge targets. Like, he could just, you know, double surprise attack this, hit this. Like, he can actually clear all the light infantry this turn. I just answer back by 24th Cavalry, push recon. Face? Okay, this is pass? Okay, surely there's like a 0% chance this isn't a Ger Aggro player. Like, that is the most Ger Aggro play I've ever seen. Just gonna try to keep it here for the spearhead. And we're gonna trade. Like, there's no reason to go face if he's gonna double pin the 3-5. And we're absolutely not a burn deck. What is he doing? I'm still just very confused as to whether this is Ger Aggro or discard. I think he's confused as to whether this is Ger Aggro or discard. Well, okay, that's annoying. It's discard. Alright, push up the lower health guys in the middle. I'll get down in engineers rather than another 1-1. And hopefully there is no... Oh, he's just going to slam the wolf pack. Okay, well, this is what happens when you slam the wolf pack. Well, yeah. Alright. It was another Japan-German discard. I did say I would stop playing if I fought another Japan-German discard, but, you know, there he was. We won on turn 6, so we'll do another. And, well, I'll keep playing until I get a game that shows off what I'm trying to highlight with this deck. So, stay tuned to the next game. Alright, well, this is the 9th Japan player in a row. This is hopefully not Japan-German aggro, or Japan-German discard. Okay, we got a signal regiment. It's aggro. I mean, this is really bad for us, but, you know, it's aggro at the very least. Get down a couple 31sts, or 321sts. It's going to be 35T. Yep, top deck 35T. Now, we have a couple different ways to trade. He's just going to pass. That's interesting. And I'll push up this one, and I'll actually keep this one back, because next turn I'm going to do light infantry, frontal assault, and hopefully buff 4 units. Might only buff 3, and that'd be okay. There's another 35T. But does he trade? Does he trade? A lot of people are, like, deathly afraid of tokens and will trade under any circumstances. Please don't have a Type 93. Okay, Type 94. We're good, we're good. And there it is. There it is. I actually forgot that these were going to have Blitz. I'm not going to lie. Let's trade both on one side so we don't get bombing rated on the HQ. Greater Purpose. The card that has seen 0 play and so many demands for buffs. And here I am, playing it in top 100. I think this card is good in this deck. Do I think this deck is better than the... And actually here, let's go ahead and show off what I mean. Greater Purpose is just a Lend-Lease here. Just straight up Lend-Leasing my opponent now. Now, of course, it's not immediate Lend-Lease, but what would you expect for a Lend-Lease that costs 3 less? Now, if I had my Matsumoto, all of these would be dealing damage. Now, of course, they're not currently dealing damage, but that's absolutely okay, because they are dealing damage to his HQ. Look at that. Turn 6, we have Ger Aggro on half health, and Greater Purpose is drawing me 4 cards. I love this deck so much. This deck is so much fun. This is easily one of my favorite decks of the expansion so far. Really just opening the doors to experimentation is one of the things I love about Brothers in Arms. Like the 24th Cavalry and Matsumoto, just like a little extra... just little extra pieces of support in this deck. Am I, like, gonna die to Burst of Fire if I don't trade? It's like a genuine concern, isn't it? I should probably trade, right? If I'm trading, I'm going for a no surrender this turn, which I think is reasonable. We didn't get it, but that's perfectly fine. Let's just go face and get 5 guys to the front line. I think if he had Shinano, he might have played it already. Although this was a pretty solid turn. I'm worried now that, you know, if he doesn't... I mean, I'm drawing an extra card off this, so that's fine. And we just get the surrender. Alright, and, you know, if he didn't surrender, we had second Greater Purpose Matsumoto. We had Motos just to kill him. I love this deck so much. This deck is so much fun. Here is the list. Oh, I just remembered this. Apologies for all the other thing. I need to move my camera over here, showing the list. So, don't worry. All of the codes will be in the description. Now, the idea behind this wasn't to show off specific lists as much as it was to highlight ideas. However, there was so much overwhelming, like, questions about the deck lists. I will just post the deck lists in the description, so don't worry if you didn't see a card because my fat head was in the way. Here is the list. So you got 2 recons, 4 321sts, the reserves, and then you have the similar stuff as to the US deck, except you're missing the US cards, which is sort of the Unity of Strengths, the Industrial Might, the We Can Do It's, and in exchange of those, we have 4 Greater Purpose, 2 Matsumoto, 2 Recon, and 4 24th Cavalries. So if you actually look, the Japan package is 100% destruction themed. And then the Soviet cards are just, you know, all of the solid cards and tokens, the motors, the frontal assaults, the close combats, the new Spearhead. I love Spearhead with Greater Purpose because it actually lets you Spearhead to draw a cards off of units that you have triggered, that you have put Greater Purpose on, which can also then deal burn damage with Matsumoto on top of buffing your units and drawing you cards into, like, additional stuff like close combat to try to get lethal. I love this deck so much. It doesn't line up 100% of the time, absolutely not. In fact, arguably it rarely lines up. You also have to cut the supply, the Lesser of Two Evils supply chain package. I probably called it supply shortage in this video, I'm now realizing, but you have to cut that. But honestly, I think Greater Purpose might be better, even against Discard, just because Discard doesn't have a lot of AoEs right now. Like, there's the Maelstroms once you get to the upper end, but most people are on Japan, German, or German, Japan Discard, and there's, like, Underfires, there's Shinano, but that's an elite. So, against Discard, like, you go low on cards, but you have, like, 4 or 5 units on board, you just slam Greater Purpose. What are they going to do? Those units have to die, and you are going to be drawing cards. So, yeah, I just absolutely love Greater Purpose. It's sort of like this huge draw card in the future. And that's perfectly fine against decks like Discard. So yeah, absolutely would recommend playing this deck, or any of the other decks that I played in this video. But that is going to be it for me. I think we ended back in... Yeah, not only did we end back in top 100, I think this might be my peak elo for the season. Yeah, this is my peak elo for the season. 54, rank 68. So, yeah, this is going to be the end of the deck building and Brothers in Arms series. So, expect Road to Rank 1 in the future, and possibly a OCC Ultimate breakdown, preview, or and or a OCC Clash review. If you wanted to catch the VOD for the OCC Clash, check out my previous video. If you want to watch the OCC Ultimate, that is going to be in 2 weeks, streamed on Saturday the 28th and Sunday the 29th. Saturday the 29th and Sunday the 30th on the Kards Twitch channel or the Kards YouTube channel. Catch them both. Catch them either of those sites. And yeah, like, subscribe, share, and I will stop rambling and end the video. Thank you very much for watching.